It's been a while since I've recorded anything. That is my closet. I apparently have no problem showing the world um, what's hanging, which is really just clothing and mostly green. Apparently, I like green. Anyway, it's been a while since I recorded anything as a video. And I am not introducing myself as the host of Sancta Colloquia since that is now finished as of the very end, December 31st of 2021. And so I am just Lauren. That could be my new thing, just Lauren. But anyway, I did want to sort of follow up with what I've done the past couple of years, which is well, it's now. So what I am doing right now is following a tradition where I have spoken of the things that I've learned over the year. And I'm late to this year, running a church and working on a PhD and running a household and making sure that my children don't feel like they have become sort of back players to all the things that I have going on, which can happen when you're a priest and running a church, that the kids can feel sort of secondary to all of that. And because I have so many things that feel primary, I wanted them to know that they are super proto-primary, more important than anything that has ever come after them. And so I did try to dedicate a lot of time to them. But anyway, so I just wanted to follow up. So the past couple of years, what I've done is I've used the Enneagram December 31st word of the day, I guess, for Enneagram 5s. But I think that on December 31st, there are just there's just one that goes out to all 9 of the types. So I don't think it was particular to me. I mean, not that Enneagram is sending Lauren things, but Enneagram 5s, 5-wing Mediterranean or 5-wing 4, whichever one. Anyway, this year they changed it up though, and they had some questions and I followed them, but like I follow recipes, I always alter something, cross something out. If I get to 90% of a recipe followed, then that is like me being super obedient and woo. Anyway, so one of the first questions that was asked was, how have I grown? And there's two areas in particular that I feel that I have grown a lot. But it mostly, the number one thing to me was understanding really and profoundly what it means to be human. And I'm defining this in sort of a negative way by talking about humanity, and to be human is to have pain. And I spent a lot of time talking with my 8-year-old, the OGBG, or hashtag the OGBG, about having very strong emotions and sitting in that discomfort. And so, and that's okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to have pain. It's okay to have fear. In a year that is wrapping up and into a complete second year of a pandemic, having fear, having difficulty breathing, having sickness has been a part of what it means to be human for me. And learning that it's okay to have pain, because pain reminds us how vulnerable we are and how fragile we are. And then when I sort of project that out and onto something like the event of the incarnation and the birth of Christ, I think of that vulnerability and that fragility and the pain that Christ had. And that's not that I want to make sacred pain. I think it's a normal thing. I think it's an everyday thing. I'm not a big advocate of the bifurcation between the sacred and the secular. I think that's kind of I don't know, a good way of throwing out the world. But what I do want to do is say that pain is completely natural. Discomfort is completely natural, and that we can sit in those things. And it doesn't mean that we have to necessarily act on them right away or that we have to eliminate them, but that we can sit with them. And I've preached on this a number of times in the past year. We can sit with our pain, and extreme pain only usually lasts about 45 minutes. Sadness, deep fear. These things only last a temporary time, and they do alleviate and dissipate. I find that in the fragility and vulnerability of humanity and its pain is paradoxically where in those things we find strength and resilience, or strength and confidence. I find that the interplay of fragility and strength really profound, and I found that working out this year as simultaneously the interplay between vulnerability and confidence. um, Sometimes I think we understand vulnerability as just like always being prone to or capable of being hurt. But there are times where I know that I am too vulnerable in a situation where I need to have more strength and more confidence or more resiliency not to be vulnerable. And um, I do find myself kind of counteracting that huge sort of Brene Brown push towards like vulnerability, which I know that she's more nuanced than that, but a lot of the people who adamantly follow her are not as nuanced as she is. But I do think that it is a problem when we just stress vulnerability, because I do believe that in many instances, the vulnerable thing for the vulnerable is to actually be confident, is to actually be strong, is actually to be resilient and to resist. And so that these things, it's not one or the other. You can actually have both of these at once. And sometimes it does have to be one or the other. Sometimes it's important for oppressed groups to not be vulnerable, to actually be strong and resilient and to fight back, to say, I'm done with this. Another thing that I thought a lot about and I learned a lot about was the idea of love. And yes, I understand it from sort of that divine perspective of unconditionality, of it goes the limits, it goes beyond the limits, it seeks and finds and hunts down and transitions and moves space from unbeloved to beloved. And what I really found was that love um, is hard. It too is painful. Um, and that it loving can cause internal turmoil and strife in one's world. And it's not easy, and it's very messy, and it makes a lot of things not necessarily in a binary yes, no, black, white, like things that can be normally positioned in opposition to each other, but that oftentimes it's yes in no and no in yes and yes and it's messy, a lot of gray in between there. And you can learn how to love distantly, and you can learn how to realize that you love someone but must also let go and move. And so that's been something that I've sat with a lot through meditation. And even in periods where I'm practicing yoga, as my New Year's resolution was to implement more stretching and yoga into my year. So this is just brand new for this year, 2022, with yoga. But anyway, just the idea of love and being upset and loving, or being hurt and loving. And that relates to myself as well as it relates to other people, and realizing that there's very much a necessity for me to realize when to love from a distance, and when I need to love myself, and to erect protection or boundaries around myself so that I can actually be more efficient in loving other people. Letting people leave is a form of loving, which we've had to do, or I've had to do in terms of church and other interpersonal relationships, letting people go their way, and realizing that in loving myself, I don't fit into other people's boxes, for me or of me, categories. And being able to admit love for someone, but then saying at the end of the day, I don't fit this, and so I'm going to go. And so that is something that is really important, and giving people space to do that towards me as well. And so that is something, being human and what it means to love have been two things that I've really grown on, and have found a richness and a profundity that I would have necessarily expected. Your mind, your body, your experience, the Holy Spirit, God, whatever it is that you want to call, I like to call it, definitely the Holy Spirit. Things get revealed to you in stages. There are times where you cannot handle the full extent of what it is that you're seeing. And so you see only part. And I think that was 2020 for me a lot. And then over the past year and coming into the close of 2021, I started to see some things that I thought I had understood or nailed down in a more um, zoomed in macro way, macro. I don't know. Oh, words escape me at this hour on a Friday. Anyway, and just really sitting with that at the end there has been just a really neat experience. Not one that I necessarily enjoyed, and still times where I find myself having to pull away and cry, or to, be kind to myself, or to maybe just sit with something. But it's been pretty impactful for me. So humanity, being human, and loving, and both of those require pain, and that's not bad. um so what the next question was, what issues still block my way to deeper transformation? I'm having difficulty reading it because you'll see that I crossed out the sentence to rephrase it. What issues did I most encounter? um and what new awarenesses did I have? And two of things popped out initially, which was efficiency and movement. Now, efficiency is like my go-to word. I am a Myers-Briggs type indicator, INTP, and I love efficiency. I love efficiency so much that when I go to a restaurant, like a fast food restaurant, that is not efficient, I literally start having panic attacks, to the point where my husband has to go order for me so I can sit with my back to whatever is happening that is completely inefficient. I'm a systems person. I like to see streamlined. I like the beauty of seamlessness and fluidity. And so when I see something that is not operating that way, oh my Lord, I just sort of start to kind of hyperventilate a little bit. But anyway, I don't mean efficiency in terms of creating systems that work really well, but efficiency in the use of my energy. And I tend to, I'm not necessarily a people pleaser, but I tend to think I am stronger and more durable than I am. And so I tend to say yes based off of, well, yes, I can do that for you because I'm pretty strong and pretty capable and I have tons of energy. But I realize after a year into running a church and trying to balance PhD and home life, that actually I don't have as much energy as I think I do. And so I'm learning to pull in. Another part of being efficient is not just where I'm expending my energy, but how much I'm letting people take a corner of me and stretch. I used to think of myself as like a jigsaw puzzle that people took pieces of me. That's not how I am at all. I think the reality is that I'm actually more, and I don't, hopefully I'm not as vain as this character on Doctor Who, but if you're familiar with Doctor Who, I think it's Cassandra who's the stretched out face that she is always screaming, moisturize me, moisturize me. Anyway, I sometimes feel pulled in all those different directions like she is. And I think it's emotional. I let people take emotional pieces of me. And then instead of me taking that emotional piece back, I will let energy stream from me into this very drawn out, scant, thin piece of my emotional energy that is still connected to someone. And sometimes I need to pull that back in. And so I had an image of myself at one point during meditation of just kind of snapping back in and sitting with a fullness of self on my little cushion outside in like 20 degrees, because I meditate 365 days a year outside, unless it is like some very strong inclement weather, which is very rare. So maybe 364 days a year, I am outside meditating in the pitch of night and the beautiful stars overhead. And but anyway, I had this image of me snapping back and just taking those portions of me that are pulled so thin. And so efficiency of me refusing being pulled in so many directions. Now, there are people who I would give permission to pull me in a direction. My children would be some of them. My congregants to an extent. My partner, even some of the work that I need to do. But I can't allow myself to be pulled in so many directions. emotionally, especially. I don't have large bandwidth for emotions. I'm not wired that way. As I said, I'm a primarily mode of thinking is thinking. The Enneagram 5, as I said. So I'm the observer, the thinker, the data collector, and I don't really live in the realm of emotions. And so I have a slim bandwidth for it anyway when I do have them, and they tend to be pretty strong. But I'm also realizing too that in my tendencies to be pulled in many directions, I want to go hide. And so what I do is, instead of pulling back in and just kind of grouping back up in myself, I will, so imagine stretched flat, but then pulling back from the center, it stretches everything further and it hurts even more. And so one of my tendencies is to run and to reject and to remove myself as punishment, and not, well, maybe for myself, but also for other people. And so I have been trying to push myself forward and pull in. And so efficiency has been something. And then speaking of movement, so a lot of that had sort of this movement idea. This year, I've noticed my body move and wanting my athletic capabilities to take another step in terms of like intentional movement. But then realizing how much of intentionality and presence I need as a pastor, as a mom, as a partner, as a friend. And that does require a very intentional movement of self, and how invigorated I've been with focusing on form in my daily workouts. So either lifting weights or doing high intensity interval training or running or even like walking the dog, but then how that translates into my day-to-day life and intentionality with presence in front of someone. And so I've noticed that my body is essential in terms of not that I just only need to take care of it, but that it's essential in the way that I communicate and present to the world. So one of the third things was, is there a theme that you collect in regards to the previous two questions? I'm guessing. I feel like this Enneagram message was sort of thrown together last minute, you know. But anyway, I mean, we're all busy, and it's second year of COVID, so no judgment. Anyway, I said, yes, I did find that there was a theme in everything that was going on. Being present, knowing myself, loving myself, and the power of self-touch. So actually, I often let my body go to the dogs, I guess one would say, or go by the wayside. I tend to ignore it. As much as I work out, as healthy as I am, as fit as I am, I tend to not think about the body very much. It's why I can do intermittent fasting. It's why I can go 20 hours without eating. I could probably even go to a significantly lower extent. It's why I have to all of a sudden really go to the bathroom, because I tend to block out the body even as much as I take care of it in a nutritional and exercise way. And so there are times in the past like month or so where I've realized that if I actually hug myself or pet myself, like actually take time to care for the external part of my existence, um, that has been really important. And especially as I advocate for caring for bodies, and that we are bodies. And then I don't believe in the dualism between the soul and the body, or the mind and the body, or that we're just encased. You know, I always talk about the Edgar suit. I don't believe in that. And so here I am actually acting like I'm just a brain trapped in some sort of fleshy suit. So I'm trying to correct that. And that is a major theme between being human and learning to love and being efficient and moving. All of it has to do with this union of body, mind, soul, and spirit. So a few other themes were let go. So these kind of minor themes that kind of fall under about understanding my unity as mind and body, letting go, having presence and intention, and calling a thing what it is. Theologian of the cross, no surprise there. So the final thing was, do you see a pattern for your future challenges? Well, I crossed that out and I rewrote the question. What comes into 2022? What am I taking with me? And so when I look back at the four things that I mentioned, human, pain is okay to sit with. Okay, this is what I'm bringing with me in 2022, trying to get more comfortable sitting with pain and discomfort, letting problems go that need to be let go rather than trying to solve everything. I love solving things. Oh, I love that feeling of just having everything click together. But I think that being human means that we just let things sit. And sometimes they resolve themselves and sometimes they don't. And I think that's probably just okay. In regards to love, acknowledging and is um what is not. And by that I mean allowing myself to love to create space for others and for me. Learning to let go is important, which is one of those themes. And mourning what was. So allowing things of the past that were really important to me or I really enjoyed, or events, activities, moments, maybe even people, letting them drift into memory. I tend to want to alleviate a lot of my human pain by recreating what was, because wasn't that so great? That isn't what I want to bring into 2022. I want to bring in a future oriented perspective of what will come, and then that too will slide into memory. Not filling the void is what I wrote down here. Number 3, efficiency, pulling in and stop allowing myself to be stretched so thin. So that is, again, so as that one of those final things about efficiency kind of came to me, and feeling like Cassandra, stretched to the limits, moisturize me. I want to bring that into 2022, not moisturize me per se, but necessarily pull in and allow, be more in control of what is being stretched out, because it's okay to be stretched out. I'm not opposed to that. I don't want to be just about me, but I need to make sure that I'm not also causing more pain in the process by extracting and pulling back, and allowing people to have emotional parts of me that don't need to have emotional parts of me, and calling a thing what it is. That is the most efficient way to go about our days, everyone. Theologians of the cross know how to call a thing what it is. And sometimes we have to do so to a point where we feel that realization that we are not being efficient, that we are allowing things to be stretched too thin, that we are loving in a wrong way, or not a wrong way, or in a way that's prohibiting us from living in a very vibrant way, and what it means to be human. We allow ourselves to call a thing what it is. And then last and finally, movement. And so this was where I added in yoga as an intentional practice in the middle of the day, to stop and to do something where I'm uniting the past and the present to move forward into the next moment. So taking a moment right here in the present to acknowledge the tension that I'm carrying in my body, and to do something that is a way of releasing it, or at least acknowledging it, calling it what it is. And not imitating movement, like watching a video and imitating what someone does, but actually creating through the slowing down into purposefulness. And so yoga helps me to imagine that in my own life, and how can I slow down in regular ways as I'm moving throughout my day, and to just sort of pull all that together. So like humanity, being human, being in love and what that means, being efficient and moving, all of it starts to swirl together into what I hope will be more lessons learned this year come in, that we're in now, 2022. And so I think that's pretty much it. I'm excited for this year. I'm not very excited lately, and I don't consider myself a necessarily super joyful person the past couple of years. I've been more on the sad side, and I think it's okay. I'm starting to embrace that I just have this core of sadness that just is going to weave like a silver thread through all that I do. And maybe that's really good as I look at my academic work and I find myself in placing myself in academia, in the church, and what that means for my pastoral ministry in both situations. I never want my academic work to be just for the academics. Oh, good Lord, I cannot take it anymore. Anyway, that's a whole different video. But being present, and allowing myself to care for people because I hurt, because I'm human, because I love, because I know what it feels like to be inefficient in how I take care of myself and my energy. And how it's difficult to learn how to move anew so that we can be more intentional and purposeful. So that's what I'm bringing into 2022. I don't know if that is helpful for anyone or if anyone else is experiencing the same things. But with that, I shared. And so I'm going to, it is Friday night, so I'm going to go try to find a very good use for this makeup that I've put on for this video. It's for you principally, but now I think I'm going to go find a pretty good use for it somewhere else and see if I can have maybe a little bit of fun later. So anyway, take care. I'm glad you're here. And as always, thanks for stopping by.